The Spokane River, although flowing the relatively short distance of 120 miles, has played an important role in the history and growth of Spokane. The river is one of the most fully developed in the United States from the standpoint of utilization. Power developments have been constructed to harness its energy. Flowing from its source at Lake Coeur in northern Idaho, the river travels in a westerly course past Post Falls,
Spokane,
9 Mile Dam, Long Lake Dam, the Little Falls Dam, Fort Spokane, and then to the Columbia River at Lake Roosevelt. Nestled in the Bitterroot Mountains of North Idaho lies beautiful Lake Coeur source of the Spokane River. Coeur d'Alene is one of 3 large lakes in northern Idaho formed by glacial activity. The lake is nearly 30 miles long and covers over 60 square miles. It is fed by numerous streams and by 2 rivers, the Coeur d'Alene and the St. Joe. This watershed provides ample supply to support the ever-flowing Spokane River. From Coeur d'Alene, the river runs westward. Here at Post Falls, Idaho, the lumber industry still plays an important part in the area's economy. From early pioneer days of the 1870s, the river has been harnessed by lumber and flour milling operations. Frederick Post operated an early-day flour mill here before being persuaded by James Glover to move to the village of Spokane Falls in 1876. Post then established the first flour mill in Spokane Falls. Logging trucks, lumber mills, and stacks of lumber are common sights throughout northern Idaho. Although the river's energy was first used to saw lumber and grind wheat into flour, presently most of its force is used for generating electricity. In 1906, the first power plant on the Spokane River outside of the city of Spokane proper was built here at Post Falls. At this point, the river cuts through a granite ledge. Located 10 miles from the outlet of Lake Coeur d'Alene, this dam was built by the Washington Water Power Company principally to provide electric power for the world-famous Coeur d'Alene mining area centered around Kellogg, Idaho. Dr. Steinmetz of the General Electric Company was engaged to check plans and specifications for the line. When finished, it was the longest and highest voltage line known to be in existence. Truly a pioneering venture for its day. Continuing its westerly course, the river flows into the state of Washington and the fertile Spokane Valley. At this point, the river is tapped for still another use, that of irrigation. The valley has long been noted for its bountiful crops of fruit and vegetables. At one time, it was a major fruit producer in the state of Washington. In recent years, however, more and more land has been taken out of cultivation as new homes, schools, and shopping centers are built. Scenes like this may still be observed throughout the valley. Here, in the shade of one of the valley's numerous orchards, a colt and mare reflect the tranquility of a summer's afternoon. As continued progress is made in freeing the river of pollution, more and more beautiful homes appear on the banks of the river. Recreational opportunities are abundant. Pleasure boating is possible on this stretch of the river behind Upriver Dam, and summer weekends find an array of boats churning the water. Near the eastern city limits of Spokane, the Upriver Dam and power plant is located. This small installation, owned by the city of Spokane, provides electrical energy for the city's water pumping plant located nearby. The water pumping plant does not draw from the river, but from the underground supply of pure water that runs beneath the valley floor. This water supply is one of Spokane's greatest assets. A few miles after the river enters the city of Spokane, it encounters the Upper Falls Control Works at the head of Havermill Island. Water needed for producing power is diverted to the southern side of the island and through the Upper Falls power plant at the opposite end of the island. In the early days of Spokane's history, lumber and flour mills were located at water's edge so that the river could turn water wheels. Still surviving is this mill on the north shore across from Crystal Island. Power to run the mills now comes from electricity, not the water wheels of old. In springtime, the Spokane is a roaring and turbulent river as it pounds by Crystal Island. It was at this point on the island that the first water pumping station for the city was constructed in 1884. Remnants of its brick walls are still visible on the island. Ironically, this pumping station is perhaps best remembered for the day it didn't function. That was August 4th, 1889, the day of the Spokane fire. The superintendent of the waterworks system was out of town, and the man in charge either asleep at the switch or unfamiliar with the mechanism of the pump. By 9 o'clock of that evening, 32 blocks in the heart of the city's business district were destroyed by the greatest fire in Spokane's history. It was on the location now occupied by Washington Water Power Company's Post Street substation, just across from this spot, that the first electric dynamo was installed. Spokane Falls, as the city was then called, had an abundance of natural power. Electricity was still in its early and experimental stage when George A. Fitch learned in 1885 that an electric plant could be purchased second-hand from a steamship operating out of Portland, Oregon. Placed in the basement of the CNC flour mill, this dynamo had sufficient capacity to operate 12 arc lights. In 1888, the first electric service extension was built to serve a residential district by the Edison Electric Company. The Washington Water Power Company came into existence in 1889, the same year Washington became a state. The river falls a total of 132 feet from Division to Monroe Streets. From the Monroe Street Bridge, a portion of the maze of bridges spanning the river can be seen. It is easy to see from this vantage point that although tamed to a degree by its numerous dams, the river is still wild and offers only short stretches of navigable water. At the time settlers arrived, it was one of the wildest streams in the country. Indians could use it only short distances for canoe travel. The roar of the falls at this point can be heard for a good distance and drowns out conversations and the noise of passing traffic. The imposing and stately Spokane County Courthouse, built in the years 1893 through 95, overlooks the river from a short distance north. At one time, its grounds were planned to extend to river's edge, a beautiful thought that unfortunately failed to materialize. The Monroe Street Bridge is the successor to two early bridges. The first was a swayback affair of wood, and the second none too substantial. The present bridge, built in 1911, was claimed to have been the largest concrete span then in existence. A more recent addition is the Maple Street Bridge, just downstream. This newer bridge overlooks an area that was a favorite camping and fishing spot of the Spokane Indians. Nestled beneath the Monroe Street Bridge, as it has been since 1890, is the Monroe Street Power Plant, operated by the Washington Water Power Company. It is interesting to note that one of the earliest uses of electricity in Spokane was that of railway travel. No less than 7 electric railway companies operated on electric power supplied by the Spokane River between 1890 and 1900. These lines, all operating within the city, ran for distances ranging from 3 to 7 miles. Flowing on through the city, the river changes from its westerly course toward the northwest. Here we look back at Spokane as the river leaves the city. Riverside State Park is one of the river's major recreational areas. Overnight camping and picnic facilities lure thousands of outdoor enthusiasts to the riverbanks during summer months. Again, we see the wild foaming rapids that make the Spokane River of no navigational value. In this area, the river curves its way through layers of lava that once flowed over the floor of the river valley. Beautiful rock formations have been produced by the eroding action of the water as it winds its way towards its junction with the Columbia River. Most famous of the rock formations in Riverside State Park is the Bowl and Pitcher, so called for its resemblance to these items. Located but a few minutes driving time from downtown Spokane, this unique attraction stands by as the river flows onward. Hiking trails wind their way along river's edge and through the adjoining timberland area. As the river continues, it encounters the backwater from 9 Mile Dam. The water begins to lose its momentum as the river broadens. Riverside State Park extends along the western shores of the river at this point, while small farms occupy the shoreline on the opposite side. Located approximately 9 miles downstream from Spokane is 9 Mile Dam and Power Plant. Completed in 1908 by the Spokane Inland Railway and Power Company, electricity from this plant was sent by transmission lines to Spokane. This energy was used to supply both city and interurban electric railways and later supplied power to the Inland Empire paper mill in the Spokane Valley. In 1925, this power site was purchased by the Washington Water Power Company to bring about a more complete utilization of power sources on the Spokane. Although the famous explorers Lewis and Clark were the first to write about the Spokane River or to map it, they did not see it. This thrill was first experienced by two men who were employed by David Thompson, the Canadian fur trader, explorer, and geographer. In 1810, these men, Finan MacDonald and Jacques Finlay, worked their way south to the Spokane River and set up a trading post where the Little Spokane joins the Spokane. Spokane House holds the unique distinction of being the first permanent post in Washington or Oregon. Spokane House functioned as an important area for fur trading, being the headquarters for trade between the Rocky Mountains and the Cascades for some 15 years. In 1825, Spokane House was moved to Fort Colville. Here the waters of the Little Spokane and the Spokane join. Progressing on a northwesterly course, the Spokane makes a horseshoe curve at Tum Tum. Tum Tum was a jump-off point or a crossroads for Indian travel, leaving the river and going by land northward. Many legends center in this area. According to some Spokane Indians, these paintings are in areas where Indian youths were taken and left to get their medicine or trail of life, an all-important ceremony through which each lad must successfully go in solitude before he could take his place as a man in the tribe. These sites were forbidden to girls and women of the tribe. Long Lake Dam and Power Plant, located some 35 miles downstream from Spokane, was among the major hydro projects in the world in its day. Completed by the Washington Water Power Company for use in 1915, the turbines installed were the largest in the world. As the Spokesman Review stated in its issue of February 7, 1911, the nearest approach to them in the history of electrical engineering are the 5 wheels in the plant at Niagara Falls. This dam had the world's highest spillway, the water plunging 170 feet over the face of the dam to the river below. At the time of completion, many people felt the dam had such generating capacity that a market could never be found for all its power. The predominant type of trees in the area over which the Spokane flows is rosa or yellow pine. This hardy species is well suited to the climate of eastern Washington. Little Falls Dam, last of the power developments on the Spokane, was put into operation in 1910 by the Washington Water Power Company. Although steel towers carrying electricity from the power plants are a common sight throughout the country now, these towers were the first such erected in the Pacific Northwest. The lines brought power to fast-growing populations in and around Spokane. In earlier days, the site at Little Falls was extremely important to the Spokane Indians. Located in the lower Spokane tribe's country, this spot was the most important salmon fishing ground on the river. Hundreds of Indians gathered here during the salmon runs to catch their year's supply of this delicious fish. Tons of salmon were dried and stored for later use. It is easy to visualize the Indians standing on these very shores, spearing the leaping salmon as they made their way up the falls. This activity lasted until the run was completed. At this time, members of the middle and upper tribes returned to their lands and the business of living took on new avenues. Since the advent of Grand Coulee Dam, salmon no longer can make their way to the Spokane River. As the Spokane nears its junction with the Columbia River, it passes near Fort Spokane. This fort was built as a military establishment in 1880 when settlers became alarmed at Indian hostility and demanded military protection. A good-sized military fort was built here some 70 miles down the river from Spokane. The fort was actually completed after the end of major Indian hostilities and was abandoned in 1898 at the time of the Spanish-American War. A few of the buildings are still standing. If it could speak, the guardhouse, with its ever-present iron-barred windows, could tell tales of errant soldiers housed within its walls. The large horse barns also still remain. As the Spokane nears the Columbia, it slows down and broadens from the backwater of Lake Roosevelt, created by Grand Coulee Dam. This area has been developed as a skiing and boating site by the United States Park Service and is becoming a nationally recognized recreational area and tourist attraction. At this point, the waters of the Spokane enter Lake Roosevelt and flow down the mighty Columbia to the Pacific Ocean. It is here that the story of the Spokane River comes to an end.